Great. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see folks from North Carolina, several other Nebraska folks on. Right, well, we might have some more folks trickle in. My name is Rihanna Putnam, for those of you that I haven't met yet. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist for CSA, and I've been helping to organize some of the regional event planning. I'm excited to have all of you here today and excited to see what kinds of regional events that you come up with. We also have Jennifer Shirk on the line, and she's going to lead us through a few slides to get started, and then we'll have some time for more targeted conversation at the end.
I am, and can folks see this now? This is my first time using Canva as a presentation. Is this visible?
No, I can't see it.
Okay, hold on just a minute. I don't know why I thought Zoom would just automatically share my screen without me telling it to. Apologies, I should know this by now. Rihanna, can you turn on the screen sharing for me? We're also doing a live transcript if anyone wants to make use of that. It's there, and that will help us provide a transcript along with the slides when we send them out. Okay, let's give this another try. How's that?
Great.
Great, and you see just the slides?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you again for being here. I'm going to go back one slide just a moment for those who are just joining. We're excited about this opportunity for expanding the reach and the depth of our conferencing to provide both a core hybrid program and regional complementary programs. So if you haven't already, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat and say where you're from. We'll be doing more personal introductions after just these few slides as background. We're excited this year to be taking the chance to do a hybrid event, something we've been thinking about for a long time, even before pandemic, because we recognize that our occasional conferences were really just not accessible to everyone. Not everyone doing this work has the opportunity to travel to attend a conference. And folks may be more interested as well in content that's close to home. At the same time, there are these vibrant networks that are emerging or have been in long existence around these practices. And we look forward here to leveraging and connecting with some of those networks, potentially inspiring some new ones to help attendees find what they want out of connecting in this event. And it's across this whole spectrum, with networking really in the middle, where virtually we have this opportunity to get the widest range of visibility to an individual's work and the widest range of connections globally, and broad conversations as well. At the same time, the opportunities locally, of course, are the ability to really focus on what's relevant locally, to be more regularly connected with folks closer to home, and to be providing more accessibility to conference connections. But this is our first year doing this, and we recognize that it's a pioneer year, and we want to make sure that as we step into this a first time, that this is mutually beneficial. And to this end, we've had a number of conversations with folks who have run regional events or were very deeply interested in being part of this year. And we've heard a number of things that we've tried to put into a plan, and you all are here today to take that plan into action with the questions that you bring to this. So I am at this point going to turn it over to Rihanna to talk a little bit about what we heard that would make a beneficial event for regions, and then I'll come back and share a little bit about what that means for a relationship with CSA. Rihanna?
Great, thanks, Jennifer. So for these regional events, we're really seeing these as an opportunity to elevate your organization and your leadership in this field. And it's an opportunity for network building within regions, so that individual organizations creating new partnerships and working together to strengthen the regional efforts that are already happening. It's also a chance for new regional networks to develop and emerge. And so we're excited for that potential. So for you as hosts, I think one of the main things that we would hope that you would get out of it is some increased visibility and to be seen as a leader in this space. We will have a map of regional activities that are a part of our conference program. And so you will be reaching new audiences that might not otherwise know about your programs, and hopefully connecting practitioners within your region that might not have met in other ways. And lastly, we're hoping that these are light lift events that are high impact. And so by providing templates and having some structure for these complementary events, we're hoping to take some of the burden of planning off of you and be able to coordinate some of that centrally and give you the opportunity to plug into a national program. So what we plan to offer to support that first is some matchmaking. And so we've been collecting an interest form with folks and are trying to identify places where there are multiple organizations that are interested in hosting in a similar state or region. And we'll put you in contact with others in that area, and also draw on our network of organizations that we've worked with in the past to see if there's any interest in supporting your effort. We have some planning templates that we're going to develop using information from past conferences. So when we look at events like a Project Slam, we did that at our 2017 and 2019 conference, and we can modify that to have some tools and templates that you can use when recruiting folks to participate in that type of event. And we'll do that for all of the event types. We'll try to draw on what we've used for past events, leverage this team to make sure that those event templates can really work and are something that are usable for you when you're planning your own events. We're also hoping that, or we'll also provide some visibility to your regional events in the core program. And so we'll have a list of regional events. Ideally, this is going to be embedded in a map. And so folks will easily be able to see where these regional events are happening. You'll have access to some of our larger platforms. If you are planning a Zoom event, for example, we have a very large Zoom package and we'd be willing to share that. So you wouldn't be burdened with the cost of having a big Zoom package. And lastly, there's the collective impact of having all of these regional events, and you would be a part of that. And so by participating, you're just building the momentum for these efforts.
Great, thanks, Rihanna. And I'll add to that, it's the last 2 points. We're also working on developing a relationship with Esri, and I'm not going to put Charmel on the spot, but I know that this is in progress and we're working out the details as to whether or not we can make this happen. But that would give us the opportunity to not just have separate events, but have connected events that together would build a better set of information about where projects happen, where people are, and the work that we might be able to do better together. So stay tuned for that. I did want to just briefly mention that there are a couple of things in the spirit of being mutually beneficial that we are asking from regional partners in order to be part of this. And one very simply is to, because I will just say that we want these to be events that are connected, that have a coherency and a relevance to each other, so that this is something that everybody is taking part of as a whole. So we ask that in some way, shape, or form, a local event be connected to the core themes of our conference. Those core themes, if you've looked at them, are very broad, so this should not be a difficulty. We do ask that the events not be competitive with the virtual program. And that is both in terms of the time in which the virtual program will be happening. So we don't want things to be conflicting in time. We also want to make sure that they're not conflicting in spirit, because our interest is in helping people take advantage of the level of engagement that is right for them. And so some people might choose to only engage locally. Some people might choose to engage only in the core program, but we want that opportunity to be there for people to do both. And so for that reason, as well as for the reason that we don't want to expect any regional events to be a full-blown program in and of themselves, the idea is that these local programs are not specifically a full-blown event. It's a light lift, a networking opportunity, a single program that could be an hour, maybe 3 hours, but that would deliver benefit for people to say, oh, I want to do this and that if they choose. To this end, we are asking, and this will go both ways, to share outreach in terms of the events. We'll definitely be promoting regional programs throughout the main CSA conversation. And we're really hoping to ask each of you, as you are part of this and reaching out to your own folks in your region, to also share the opportunities to take part in the larger program for those who are interested. And that can start right now. We want to make sure folks know that there's opportunity to present posters and that word gets out and around. And then this last part we can talk a little bit more about, which is that we would like to have these events be at no cost for folks who attend regionally. And that's to fulfill this ideal of making conferencing accessible for people. We know that there are questions about costs then that you might incur. And I would say a couple of things to that end. One is which we, again, as Rihanna mentioned, we want to support you with platforms where we can. Two, a reminder, we're not expecting these to be huge events. And then third, if you want to do something like solicit donations or in-kind support, or even sponsorships, the only thing to that end that we would ask is that you not use this as a local fundraising activity, and that you try to limit your fundraising to cover just the basic costs of hosting that event. And for anybody that wants to go down that road, let's talk more, because we can work out details that will help you along those lines where we can. So with that in mind, what we want to provide to help you deliver a good program, what we ask to make this a complimentary opportunity, I'm going to turn it over to Rihanna to talk about the types of events.
Yeah, so when we met in the fall, we kind of talked through some of the different types of events, and I think what we landed on was a menu of events that are these lighter lift complementary events that can support the core program. So things like a watch party. So it would be live streaming a keynote or a symposia session and then having a discussion to follow up. Project Slam or lightning talks. In the past, I mentioned earlier, we've done project slams that are kind of a more fun, fast-paced way to introduce projects that could be a nice networking opportunity for individuals in the area that maybe haven't had a chance to highlight their project. Social hour can be any kind of networking event. It could be a tour of a facility or a project, or just a meetup in your area of local practitioners. Last year, we had some really great success with some moderated poster sessions. This year, we're hoping to offer that opportunity to different groups, and regional groups would be one way that we would be hopefully elevating posters. And so we would help you get a list of posters from your region that are presenting as part of the core program, and then your organization could help host a session with those poster presenters where they could share their work and make connections close to home. And then the last thing that we had an idea for was, we know that a lot of funding for these kinds of projects comes at the local and regional level. And so looking at a panel of funders that would be specific to your region. And so this would be an opportunity to meet the folks that are able to fund these projects, and for people to be able to ask questions, maybe learn best practices, and to make these projects more successful. There may be things that we missed that kind of fit the vision that Jennifer laid out just a moment ago. And so if you had other ideas about events, we're happy to hear them, but we are trying to keep them in the spirit of in connection to our core program, not in competition with.
Yeah, Rihanna, if I can just add to that, a clarification in regards to this. We know that some of you may already be planning big events, or have an ancillary, a totally separate event that's been in the works for years and want to add a CSA component to that. And in those cases, that's great. We are excited about those connections, and let's talk more about how to make that happen. But I do just want to reinforce, we're not asking people to start their own local conference from scratch. And we hope that in this instance, if that happens, it's a conduit as well for those who want to the larger program rather than a competitive event.
Yeah, and we also saw this as an opportunity in a year where we can't meet in person, for maybe there'd be the opportunity for some of these events to happen in person. And so some things can happen virtually, or some of these event types can. And then we also encourage you, if it's in your capacity and if it feels like a safe thing to do, to look at doing some in-person events as well to support the broader online program.
Great.
Right. And so today we also wanted to hear more about what you want your regional event to look like this year. And so what time are we at right now? 11:21. I know that some of you have been part of the conversations that we've had in the fall, and maybe are at a place where you have a vision of what your regional event might look like. And so maybe if we can spend the next 10 or 15 minutes hearing from folks that have an idea of what they'd like their regional event to look like, I think it might be helpful to hear just kind of some of the different variations that people are already thinking on the way that they could plug into the 2022 event program. Stella, I see your hand raised.
Yes, and if I remember how to lower it, I will do so. I always have trouble with these electronic signals. So, hey, everyone, I'm Stella Tarnay, and I'm Executive Director of Capital Nature in Washington, D.C., and also co-founder and facilitator of the Washington, D.C. Area Citizen Science Network. And our steering committee includes some familiar names. You all know Mary Ford and probably Carrie Seltzer and some others. So we have a regional steering committee of about 7 of us. And just wanted to let you all know that we've been meeting since 2017. And so we really see the value of regional gatherings. And so our task is really going to be to see how we connect what we're doing with kind of your focus for the 2022 conference. And more likely, we're probably going to be working off the City Nature Challenge, which will have just finished at the end of April, and do our regional conference before the North American one. And we're actually talking about having a theme for 2022 spring, which would be citizen science for conservation. So we have a number of organizations in the region that are really strategically using citizen science to make the case for conservation of threatened lands and waters. So that is probably going to be our theme, but it would be interesting to see how we can align it with what's happening a few weeks later. And I see blank faces. You guys not like that idea? What, did I
No, thanks, Stella.
not express it? All right.
So this is Jacoby. Hey, Stella. So I think I haven't been as engaged from the original discussions about regional conferences in the last several months. I apologize if I've been very busy, but still, I know we didn't necessarily talk about this in our last conversation. I think, just to say this in the nicest way, so if we can open it up, I think there's a lot more in this region that could be covered in a regional event. So I think not for y'all to go back to the drawing board, but there's a lot of EJ stuff in this region. There's other things that are happening. So I just want to, there's some stuff that's going on with NASA that Dr. Annenberg is doing. I mean, I think it'll be good to figure out if we're going to have a regional DC event, or is it going to just be a DC Maryland event? Is it going to be a DC event? We need to figure out what's going to be in that, because it could be a DC event, but it doesn't make sense to me. If it's going to be a DMV event, I think, just to be honest, it needs to be opened up to other topics. So I just want to throw that out there. But
That's
again, I haven't been as
fantastic. Yeah,
engaged.
let's keep on talking. Let's keep on talking. I love the conversation we started.
Yeah, I haven't been as engaged in our CSA conversation on this, but Stella, we had a good conversation about, collaboration of the day. And I think some of that conversation speaks to some other things that are happening around citizen science, community science, with Empower DC in DC, with the Brentwood neighborhood in DC, right? With Rhonda Hamilton in DC, with the Anacostia River stuff, with the water keepers. You got some tree groups in the region where I think there's a connectivity. I just did a presentation 2 days ago for the forest group. There's a national forest group, and we're talking about EJ and climate change and trees. So I'll stop talking, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Stella.
Well, this actually shows the value of what you guys are doing here with this meeting, is that, there are a number of us in our own region who have been very active networking kind of within our own realms. And so I think what you're really doing effectively is helping those of us in our regions who may not be talking often enough to connect. So I'll look forward to tapping into that opportunity with you guys and with Sokobi and possibly with some others.
Thanks, Stella. I'll also point out that this really illustrates that there is great appetite for deep connections and full-blown conferencing at regional levels, and more of that needs to happen. But that's a really big lift for a lot of people to do this year. And that's why with our approach, we didn't want to, and those of you who are part of that brainstorming, we didn't want to expect that regions would be doing that kind of investment this year. In the future, we really hope to be seeing and facilitating more full-blown regional connections where there is that capacity, and maybe helping to grow that capacity in places where it doesn't already exist, so that we might find ourselves in a future year without a central program, but really emphasizing only regional events. This year, because there is a central program, what we're hoping to do is not find ourselves in a situation where people say, oh, well, I'm just going to do the regional thing this year. We really are hoping that it's a both and for the people who especially would ordinarily come to a CITSI virtual event. So Stella, I think that your audience probably would do both and, many of them. And we know that there are some who would never do both and that's where the regional events can fill a gap. But let's talk more about making that connection.
Yeah, and I will add too that just because there's one regional event looking at one area doesn't mean that there can't be another that is looking at a different area of interest. So there can be multiple events happening in a region. Our goal isn't to try to centralize it so that there is one organizing committee for all of the events in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, but more so to put you in connection so that your events aren't competing, and to allow folks who are engaged in the core program or who are attending the 2022 event that they can see a list of all of those things that are happening in their area and it can plug in different ways. Great. Katie, I see your hand up.
Yes, sorry. I haven't done a whole lot of thinking yet, but so it's great to hear other ideas as well. But yeah, I'm in the Seattle Pacific Northwest area. I'm at Woodland Park Zoo, but there's others. I think there's others in the region, you know, thinking about events. And part of me was thinking about, you know, splitting out a little bit by topic. But I definitely would love to just invite folks in our region who are interested in community and citizen science, you know, to come to our beautiful site. So hopefully, you know, but yeah, you know, thinking like if others in the region are doing events, maybe we sort of split into interest areas. You know, for the zoo, most of our engagement is around wildlife, of course. So maybe we take the wildlife and the plant people or something, and then others might do, you know, other focuses. So I don't know, still thinking about it, exploring I really appreciated the templates you offered. You know, I know we talked about that at a past meeting, but they really helped to kind of organize my initial thoughts about it. So, and I can't remember what I actually entered on there either. So, but I think it was sort of like, I don't know, tag on events, or I didn't think a watch party, you know, for a site like the zoo would make a lot of sense. But I could see how that could make sense for other types of sites. So I don't know, still thinking about it. I have to ask our event staff and just kind of get all the permissions and everything too.
Great, yeah, and thank you for flagging that as well. The interest form was just that. An interest form was a way for us to make connections. It doesn't commit you to any particular type of event. I will be looking for those more formal commitments in March sometime, and so that still gives folks time to really finesse and finalize what their regional event might look like. Jacoby, do you have?
Well, yeah. Just wanted to, thanks for that, Brianna. Thanks for that that point you made, and also for Stella. So I think there's a couple things. Yeah, if we're able to kind of like have a one-stop shop in the region to know what regional events people are doing, I think that will be good, because this region is a very highly densified, highly diverse region in various ways, including, you know, citizen science topics. And I was excited about Stella's work because Stella and I talked recently, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for cross-pollination in our work. And then I think so we want to be able to have this kind of one-stop shop of what's happening, and people can know like this is going on in your region as it relates to conservation, environmental justice, as it relates to, you know, libraries, youth, you know, whatever we're doing, right? Using iNaturalist, so whatever we're doing, but then provide opportunities for cross-pollination as well. That's what I think probably the better point in what I said earlier. Just to see how we can push that forward within the region. But then also is going back to Stella's work, just being able to make those connections and how we can do that. And then, you know, sort of my role on the board, you know, and I think about DEI issues and justice issues, how we are integrating DEI and justice into these efforts as well. And so I think the cross-pollination also can help with some of that as well, to bring different stakeholders, bring different populations together so we can really expand citizen science and have better connectivity too. So things are a little bit more, in some cases, multifaceted, and then also be able to do more leveraging too. So I'll stop, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Jacoby. And I think that is really at the heart of why we conference at CSA, is to do that cross-pollination. And I think by connecting these regional events to the broader program, hopefully folks will be making some new connections within their region that they might not otherwise have. Greg, and then Charmel. Greg, you're muted.
I had myself mute, sorry. We are just starting in the formative stages of some ideas, and just really appreciate all the resources and thought that's gone into these regional events. And for us, an opportunity is emerging at Colorado State University and at CITSI, where the CSU system is building out a new campus in Denver, That's a first of its kind public university open to all, which is quite unique. And so it just happens to be an opportunity that's popping into my brain to kind of coalesce a regional event around who's doing what where in the Rocky Mountain region, and time that well with the launch and opening of a building called the Terra building. The campus is composed of 3 buildings: the Vita building for health, the Terra building for environment, and the Hydro building for water. And so this is an opportunity to leverage that space, which will be available to us starting in April, for a regional convening. So anyway, very formative ideas at this early stage, but I think all of the conversations here are really helpful to us as we think about that.
Great, thanks, Greg.
So I'll follow on. Can you hear me okay? So I'm in North Virginia, and Charmel, and Greg's my co-chair with the data metadata working group. I just kind of had actually like some input maybe from people in the chat. I'm looking, you know, who knows what's going to be the environment, but I would like to have a, you know, as Katie was saying, a group together. So I'd like either a viewing party of the existing session, something simple, something straight, just, or, you know, a happy hour, or combination of both. And I could see it either happening at my company's office building in North Virginia, and then I know Maryland, DC, we might have to have multiple of them just because of the distance. But my question to the group is, since the sessions, and maybe you can, Jennifer Rihanna, you can tell us the kind of the times of these overall sessions, since they're probably in the middle of the work day. Do you see people, or do you think people would be able to come to a viewing party? Forget about COVID, just assume we could get together on that front, because if we can't on that front, then everything's canceled. But if we can get together, what are your thoughts on people being willing to go in the middle of the workday and do it? I'm just trying to figure out, and we're in the East Coast, so if they happen later in the day, we might be able to do it because it might be in the evening. I don't know. Oh, so what's the timing, and what's your thoughts?
Yeah, 2 things on that end, and we were generally thinking the watch parties around the keynotes. The core program is going to be in the East Coast afternoon. The idea is that leaves space on either side of the day as locally appropriate, whether that's time zone or work day or whatever it might be, for these events to happen around that. The watch parties, we're trying to schedule the keynotes to be at the opening and the closing of the event. Now, there's some flexibility there. We also will be recording these likely in advance. So there could be opportunity to have a local watch party outside of the time when it is broadly live streamed. So I think that there's some flexibility around that as well. So it would be disconnected from the Q&A, but the Q&A, although not with the speaker, could be local. And these are some of the things that we're also hoping that if it makes sense locally that people might do, is there's this opportunity for sense making at the local or regional level as well. So if you're hearing something in the core program, how can we talk about that locally? You know, we may not be all in the same room together in this core program, although we try to facilitate conversations in chat and in our member space. But you can have those kinds of conversations locally. And so if there is a recording available to watch the keynote and then talk about it, make sense of it, that could be another way to do it, disentangled from the restrictions of the program itself.
Great. Thanks, Charmel. Allie?
Hi, everybody. So we're planning on having a watch party for the keynote in 3 different locations across the state. So Eastern, Central, and Western with partners. So we have the Community Scientists of Nebraska Network, and we have partners across the state. So we were thinking those events could be in person with hopefully some sort of Q&A social component. And then offering one other thing as a hybrid event. So on the eastern side of the state where we have the biggest population, but available across the state virtually. And we spoke of having Session Slam, but I think we're pretty open. We don't exactly have it tuned into exactly what we want to have, because I'm also sitting here like, oh, a funding panel would be really helpful. And so I think that we'll leave that up to the group. But so far we've planned that for sure, the keynote in 3 locations, and then one other offering. It also aligns with Bird Month in Nebraska that has a community science project component. So that's really nice for, hitting kind of being able to feed 2 birds with 1 scone or whatever you want to say. But yeah.
That's great. I just saw in the interest form, somebody from the Rocky Mountain Bird Conservancy. Is that someone you've been working with in the Western?
Yeah, so she's part of
Nebraska?
our group. She would be leading the Western Nebraska watch party.
That's great. It's been nice to see how much interest there is in Nebraska. And I know we have Anna on the phone on the call, who's calling in from Kansas, who's looking at some events with the Land Institute in Kansas as well. So there might be some opportunity to work together there as well. Great, Jackie.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jackie James, and I'm with Citizen Science in Western New York. Jennifer, what is the theme for this conference?
So the overall theme is connected where you are. There are 3 symposia themes. Rihanna, do you have them handy?
Yeah, they're working across boundaries, equity and inclusion in sea sciences, and the future of sea sciences. Okay. And then there'll be a 4th theme as well. That'll be a symposia day that is still emerging from poster submissions.
Okay. All right. Actually, I'm in an interesting scenario. I am going to be collaborating with Darlene Cavalier. I'm actually going to be at another conference, and right after I'm going to be staying in Phoenix, Tempe area and holding a workshop with her, probably in a library, around we have a soil sampling test kit that we have been using locally and actually selling to folks across the country on testing their soil using citizen science in our toolkit for testing soil mainly in gardens and also in children's play areas for environmental toxins. So it'll be a workshop somehow collaborating with Darlene around our soil sampling test kit. And we also like to focus in environmental justice areas. That's what we're focusing on here in Western New York. So hoping to share that information in Arizona.
That's great. I know Darlene has something planned in Tempe, so it may be that's already rolled into the event that she's looking at. But yeah, let's.
Yeah, I've already reached out to her, and we're talking as far as how I'm gonna be involved. All this was just sort of a last minute decision as I realized I was going to be there anyways. So
that's great. Haley, sorry, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry, trying to do too many buttons at once. Yeah, it's Haley. Thanks. So yeah, thanks again for having us all here. I do think this is helping some with our brainstorming. I'm in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, so Triangle area. And a few of us have already kind of tossed around some ideas and brainstormed a little bit, but as soon as we got on, I saw Valerie get on, who I know is also in the Raleigh area. So yeah, I'm sure there are others around who also maybe have some ideas. So I'm glad you all are trying to get us connected, and we'll probably backtrack a little bit maybe to collaborate some more going forwards. But I guess, not to put you all on the spot, and I know this is early days still, but I guess one question we were having around thinking about programming and like watch parties and stuff like that was just wondering like when the keynotes might be announced and scheduling, stuff like that, which maybe y'all don't have the answer for, but I was curious if you have kind of like an estimated idea of when that might be released for us to be able to do some more planning around like themes of talks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're hoping to get that announced as soon as possible. We're working to confirm some details. And we're better on timing at this point than we are on names. But as I mentioned, the keynotes, there would be that opportunity with the recording to be disentangled from the main schedule if you choose to do that.
Great. And yeah, I think
that
will be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just put in the chat, I know there are some of you on the call today that have not filled out the interest form yet. And I would love to see everybody, if you are interested, to put your name on that list so we can start to really make those targeted connections between folks like Haley and Valerie, who are both working in the Raleigh area.
Yeah, and I know that there are a number of hands up. I see Ellen and Anna. I'm going to actually turn to Dr. Johnson first in case it connects to what Haley just said in terms of Raleigh. Dean Johnson.
Yes, it does, in the sense that we would be happy to work with you and be a part of the group. The challenge that we have is that it is after school ends for us. So in terms of student involvement, that might be a challenge for us. And I don't want us not to be a part of the conversation. So I think that if we think of ways to do something that will be inclusive, that would work. But also we've got other partners like the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network that don't have that same time frame. And I don't know if you all have been in contact with them or with WERA, which is in Mebane. And even though Mebane is outside the triangle, their association, Omega and Brenda Wilson, have been key in helping facilitate EJ and citizen science conversations, activities, events for North Carolina. So somehow we've got to be connected and organized if we're going to do a regional event.
Yes, thank you. And I know Omega had RSVP'd and then had to decline the meeting at the end. And so Omega and Brenda have been in the loop on this, and hopefully we can close the circle between others in North Carolina. And I know that there was a strong group, was it just last year or was it in 2020, that did a North Carolina regional conference. And so I'm sure that there are lots of folks that you can draw on to plan a bigger event.
Yeah, and again, there's no pressure to plan a big event together, but at least have the events that you're doing, whatever they might be aware of each other and connected if that is beneficial. Ellen and then Anna.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Ellen Erickson. I work for the Natural History Museum of Utah. So I'm in Salt Lake City. And in pre-COVID times, we were hosting an annual Utah practitioners meeting of people engaging in citizen and community science work in the state of Utah. And we've held 4 annual conferences over the course of 4 years, and grew in attendance every year, excuse me, which was wonderful and exciting. And that's something that I'm planning to get back to doing this year. Traditionally, we were hosting those, between Thanksgiving and Christmas was a time that worked well for people's schedules with schooling, but also with field seasons. And so that was sort of what I was budgeting for. But hearing everyone speak this morning, I'm feeling inspired to maybe push some things up. And I love the idea of synergizing with the conference more and hosting viewing parties and that sort of thing, as maybe a precursor to our larger state meeting that we pull together. So thank you for sharing all of your info, everybody. It really is inspiring to me. So I just wanted to share that that's what we've been doing in Utah, and it really got off track with COVID stuff, as we can all relate to. So I look forward to getting that back on board, and it's worked really nicely for us with the state, especially the way that Utah is structured. It's a very big area. Lots of the population is sort of crammed into the northern portion of the state, surrounding the Salt Lake City area and sort of beyond. But then there's wonderful work that's happening in southern Utah, but large geographic spreads between those places. And so having a meeting where people can come together has been really well received by people in the state. And here we're not networking as much because of some differences in geography and location. So the meetings really proved wonderful in terms of getting people connected to start collaborating, doing lightning talks, having keynote speakers, and just having time to socialize and network has been wonderful.
Yeah, Ellen, I would say if there isn't a reason to accelerate what you're doing in the time frame, but you could do something lighter then that would inspire folks to come to your event later on, and hopefully inspire some to also come to the core program. So don't feel pressured to move it up. Again, we are wanting these to be complementary, and we'd love to give folks in your network to also have the opportunity to connect with CSA if they are interested in doing that. Anna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Anderson, and joining from the Great Plains this morning in Salina, Kansas. And I work for the Land Institute, an agricultural research organization, and we're working on domesticating perennial crops. And our civic science program is a relatively new component of the organization. And so when we heard about the opportunity of connecting with other practitioners in the region, we were really excited about that, and have been thinking about some ideas of kind of an interactive component connected to the social hour of kind of hosting some plot tours and some prairie walks at one of our research field stations located in eastern Kansas, outside of Lawrence, and looking at the possibility of kind of partnering with the University of Kansas and also being in closer proximity to Kansas City, Missouri, and connecting with some more community science initiatives as well. So looking at that social hour component, and also maybe an opportunity to do some Project Slam component as well, to get a feel for what initiatives are going on in this region.
Great, thanks, Anna.
Great. I really appreciate everyone sharing today. I noticed that we are coming up on the top of the hour. I had wanted to give some time for breakout rooms, which I'm not sure that we have a lot of time for those to be especially generative, but I will open that up in just a few minutes. If there are anybody that wants to, maybe if there were other folks in the region, it sounds like there are a few people from DC, it might be, we could use the last 5 minutes maybe to just share some contact info and build connections around that, so I can open up a few of those rooms in just a couple of moments. The next steps in planning are going to be getting the templates together for these regional events, and I really want them to come from this community of regional leaders who are planning things. And so my plan is to get some drafts using what we have used for conferences in the past that might be at different scales and for a different audience than would work for these regions, kind of get those scaled down and then share them back out for your feedback. So we can really refine them and have them be useful tools for folks that are planning regional events. And so my goal is to get those out in the next couple of weeks and then to pass that back to this group. And I would love your feedback on those once we have drafts ready. As far as meetings go, I think we'll look at a meeting in mid-February to talk about those templates, to walk through them and to see what remaining questions folks still have. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking for more formal commitments on events sometime in March. So if you want to be included in the program, we'll have another form that will circulate in March that will be a more formal commitment where we'll ask for some details and specifics so we can start to build that regional program as part of the 2022 event. And so, Jennifer, is there anything else in closing that you can think of?
I just don't hesitate to reach out with questions. So shoot us an email. I'm Jennifer at citizenscience.org, Rihanna at citizenscience.org, info at comes to us as well. Happy to talk more about what would best support you in this.
Yeah,
I have a quick question if I can jump in. Apologies, Rihanna.
Yeah, please.
So I've already filled out a form, but now that I'm having new thoughts about maybe adding in some things, is there a way to edit the form? Would you prefer to have a resubmission? Do you have suggestions on that?
So the interest form was a planning tool mostly to help us make connections. So if we can see that there are 3 groups in Nebraska that are looking at planning events, we can try to connect them. And so that way those events can happen in collaboration and they can leverage each other and kind of work together. I think if you want to make changes, my suggestion would be to wait and you can formalize those and put that in the form that we'll be sharing in early March for the final program. But I don't think we need anything revised for the interest form. If you have ideas and you want help fleshing them out, I'm happy to, we can email back and forth about them, but no need to formally resubmit that. Yeah, Haley.
Hi, yeah, just another quick follow-up question on that as well. So at what point do you anticipate letting people know, like we've already made some connections here on this call, but say there was someone else in our area that submitted a form that we're unaware of, how soon do you think you'll be reaching out to folks to make sure they're connected with everyone in their area?
I'll do that after this call. I'll go in and I'll look through and try to make those connections. And I think that was the goal with the interest form. And I think in the email that I sent out about this meeting to folks that were part of those early brainstorms, I requested that you put your name on that interest form if you want to be included in future planning meetings. And so if you haven't filled that out already, I linked to it in the chat earlier. I can pull the link again. That way we can really start to make do the matchmaking and start to get you guys connected early in the planning process instead of later. Great. Would a breakout room be helpful for anybody? Hands up if you'd like an opportunity to chat one-on-one with anybody on the call in the last couple minutes. Otherwise, we can continue to just ask questions as a big group. And especially for folks in the...
I was just going to say, I have a hard stop at 1. I have another meeting to go to, so I can't do the breakout groups, but I am going to respond to you, Haley.
Great. I appreciate everyone's time today, and I like to keep meetings under an hour if we can. And so if there aren't any questions, I will release you all back to your afternoons. Really appreciate you all being on today and sharing your vision for your regional events. We are planning on sharing this recording. And if you're okay with that, if you have any concerns or would like your description of your event not to be shared, just send me an email and I can try to edit that out. But I think it'll be helpful for folks to see kind of the different ways and directions that people are going with events, and will hopefully inspire them to host their own. Great. Well, hopefully we'll hear from you soon, and I will be in touch with everyone that's submitted the interest form. Great. Thanks, everyone.